You're listening to Dairy Voice by Dairy Business News, a podcast exclusively for the dairy industry.
One of our sponsors of the Dairy Voice podcast is National DHIA. NDHIA ensures information accuracy and represents their members' interests. They are the direct voice for the dairy information industry. To find out more, go to dhia.org.
What's the largest part of your cow's diet? Your forage. But every farm is different, and so is every ration. Whatever your crop, whatever your conditions, there's a Forage Mate inoculant for that. The Forage Mate inoculant portfolio delivers a wide range of proven performers, each uniquely formulated to maintain superior standards and consistency to help your cows reach their full potential. Flex to your forage goals at foragemate.com or contact your Diamond V Forage Mate representative today.
Welcome to the newest edition of the podcast series from the Dairy Voice on Dairy Business News and part of the Showbox Sires series, The Evolution of the Great Cow. After 2.5 decades of leadership from John Myers at Holstein USA, there's a new CEO, and we'd like to introduce you to her. She's dynamic and smart, and has come through the Holstein farm system. She has a great vision for what the business needs to be. It is building a team of leaders at Holstein USA to bring the organization into the future. It's my pleasure today to introduce you to her, and the reason it's part of the evolution of the great cow is because for those of us that breed cows, there's nothing more important than having a strong association. So, Lindsey Worden, the new CEO of Holstein, welcome. We're glad to have you on this podcast.
Thanks very much, Tim. Happy to be here.
So, Lindsey, I know quite a few of the answers to these questions, but our listeners will really enjoy them. Let's start with, tell us about your roots. Where'd you come from, your family, a little of that to start this discussion, Lindsey.
I sometimes joke with people that the most awkward question somebody can ask me is, where are you from? Because I've been fortunate to be able to live in a lot of parts of the country and experience all different types of farming operations and just how the dairy industry operates in a lot of different parts of the country. So I was born in upstate New York, a little town called Windsor. My parents had a 65 cow traditional tie-stall dairy farm. Up until I was 10 years old, that was kind of my home, playing in the feed alley with the cows eating, and just a very traditional family farming operation, registered Holsteins. My parents did some marketing of genetics at that time. I was in New York. I got my first registered calf when I was 9 years old and was able to show her a little bit in Little Britches and things like that at our county Holstein show. So when I was about 10 years old, my parents decided to actually relocate our dairy farm to New Mexico. So we moved down to southeastern New Mexico, built a dairy farm down there. New Mexico was kind of a booming dairy area in the early 90s. This was about 1994 when we moved down there. So at their largest, they milked about 1,400 cows down there. And everything was either registered or basic ID. So they brought all their registered animals from New York and then purchased cows that they needed to fill the lots there. So that was a dry lot dairy, pretty typical for the area. So that was a lot different. There was a big change from New York. And there wasn't a lot for registered Holstein activities, of course, down there, but my parents stayed very engaged with the association, and so I got some exposure through them. And I was really active in 4-H. So I showed dairy heifers in 4-H along with some other projects and did dairy cattle judging and things like that. I got we classified our cows down there. So my parents let me take the day off school when we classified. So again, I got some exposure to kind of the registered side of things down there in New Mexico. So that's kind of where I grew up. I graduated high school down in New Mexico, went to college in Wisconsin at University of Wisconsin at Madison. So again, a totally different part of the country. Met a lot of friends that had great registered Holstein farms and did all the junior Holstein activities their whole life. That was neat exposure. And then after college, I moved out here to Vermont, and that's where I've been ever since.
With over 85 projects, California Bioenergy is without a doubt one of the leading developers of anaerobic digesters for dairy farms in the United States. Since 2006, CalBio has been forming successful partnerships with dairy farmers to create digesters that are built to last. Our CalBio team has the expertise to help lead you through the entire development process. From project design and engineering to credit generation and the day-to-day operations. With subsidiaries in the Northwest, Midwest, and Southwest, CalBio is ready to partner with dairy farmers across the country. Learn more at calbioenergy.com.
I like to call you a Vermonter, Lindsey, because we're proud to have you in Vermont.
Well, I've lived in Vermont longer than I've lived anywhere else in my life now, so I feel like I can say that I'm a Vermonter confidently.
Good. I would say most of my neighbors and friends wouldn't call you a Vermonter yet, but I'm okay with it. So.
Thanks.
So, Lindsey, you've a lot of good information here. Think about this as our listeners. I've been to Windsor, New York, to your mom and dad's farm, and when Chuck and Vanessa moved to New Mexico, it really shocked everybody. Tell us what you went through as a kid with, to heck with the Holstein part of this. Tell us what that was like as a kid to pick up your roots in Windsor, New York, a little town in eastern New York, to go to southeastern New Mexico.
It was definitely a culture shock, even just the landscape. Like, I remember I was like pen pals with my cousins, and I'm like, there's no trees, there's no mountains, like you can just see forever. We lived basically kind of in the oil fields all around us. So there was like oil derricks around us and lots of snakes and spiders and fun stuff like that. But in terms of being a farm kid, it was pretty cool because the dairy site was huge. Like, we had several hundred calf hutches, and you had these huge, long concrete alleys in between the dry lots. So lots of good space to ride your bikes really fast. And me and my parents kind of gave us free run of the place. So my brothers and I would just go do whatever we wanted all day around the farm. And so it was kind of cool from that standpoint. We had a lot of room to roam, but it was definitely a big culture shock. Even just, going from a small elementary school in Windsor to like each grade had its own separate school that was in a different location. So I remember my mom like kind of trying to figure out who was supposed to go to school where and when and things like that. That was different food. Have like a holiday party at the dairy and invite all of our employees and their spouses, and they would bring this like delicious homemade tamales and cook up a big thing of menudo in our shop there. So it was just totally different. I really enjoyed it. I still love Tex-Mex Mexican food to this day. I really liked the style of dairying out there. I love seeing the cows out on the dry lots. As long as it didn't snow, which it didn't snow very often, or it didn't rain really hard, which it didn't rain very hard too often either. It was really comfortable. So it was a cool place to grow up. It was a lot different, and it was adjustment, but I really liked growing up in New Mexico.
Isn't that neat though, that, I mean, the culture shock for a young headed to teenage girl, those things I raised two daughters, and I don't know that mine would have been that comfortable being transplanted to a whole new part of the world. But what you did, Lindsey, was embraced it, and it sounds like it helped shape who you are. Thinking about that, I want to go back to your youth and Holstein cattle. You touched on it, you were in 4-H and all that jazz. Talk about how important the youth programs were to you.
Youth programs were extremely important because, like I said, I didn't have like junior Holstein meetings to go to. I didn't go to a junior Holstein convention. So it was really just my parents, and then later on a couple other kind of mentors teaching me things. But it really opened up a whole new world, and I really credit my involvement between the junior Holstein activities I did do, and then especially 4-H, and really keeping me engaged in agriculture. Because when you're on a big dairy farm like that, there's a full staff of employees. The kids don't have chores like if we'd stayed in New York, or my friends that grew up on farms in Wisconsin. My life on a farm was much, much different than them. I wasn't going and milking cow. Like, maybe I'd go hang out in the parlor sometimes and help, but it wasn't the routine like it is when you're on a smaller farm. And so being involved in 4-H and like I said, dairy judging and going to national conventions with my parents, that's really what helps spark my interest in agriculture and be able to see dairy, how I could be involved in the dairy industry. I didn't necessarily see myself being a farmer full time, but getting exposure to these things showed me a lot, and it definitely just kept me really engaged with the cattle. Between my 4-H projects and dairy judging and practicing for Dairy Jeopardy and things like that, it really helped keep me interested because I didn't necessarily have as much of a connection. I didn't get up and milk cows every morning like a lot of my friends did growing up. So
I think that's a key part of this podcast, Lindsey. And one reason I'm so excited about what you can bring to Holstein is you truly have come through the Holstein Association every step of the way. So you've been, on the small New York purebred herd. You moved and kept your interest in purebred Holstein cattle and a 1,400 cow dairy. You've done cattle judging. You've done Dairy Jeopardy. You've been to the conventions for years and years. And I truly think the fabric of Holstein is what's made you. I think that that's a neat point. I feel another podcast coming on for young listeners, Lindsey. Is this a dream come true for you? Like it's got to be surreal for you. How does it feel?
A great way to put it. I don't necessarily know that when I was younger, oh, I'll be the CEO of the Holstein Association someday. But I've loved working for Holstein. I love working for our members. And I really feel like I grew up with the Holstein Association, both when I was younger and then when I started working here as a 22-year-old fresh out of college. About my journey, it's just felt like a very natural progression, and appreciate all the opportunities that I've been given by predecessor John Meyer, and then so many of my colleagues here just giving me increased responsibility, giving me the chance to be involved in different projects, and especially things that I was interested in, like, hey, I'm interested in, helping out in a national show or helping with a judges conference. Maybe it doesn't fit within my job description necessarily, but it really fostered my interest and let me get involved in different things. And it gave me a great, well-rounded perspective of what we do as an association. So I would say my progression through the years has just felt like kind of a natural progression of just growing and learning and being given opportunities and taking advantage of those, taking on more responsibility. And it's culminated to this point. In some ways, like, I still don't walk in every day and like, oh, I'm the CEO of the Holstein Association. That part is, I think, will start to sink in as I get out and go to events. First time I saw our updated registration certificates with my signature at the bottom, that was pretty cool. I haven't sent in my own registrations yet this year to get back some of my own with my signature on it, but that was a little bit of a neat moment.
I really hadn't thought of that. Every Holstein that's registered in the United States today will be signed by you. So that's really cool. I hadn't thought of it. I'll look forward to my next certificate, Lindsey, so I can, I'll send you a picture. Tell us, you touched on it a little bit, your education through UW. Tell me why you went there, what you did there, that kind of thing.
Sure. So I was fortunate. Again, my parents took me to a lot of different things when I was growing up. And so I remember going to World Dairy Expo with my parents for the first time. I was probably in 9th or 10th grade. So I got to see Madison. I got to see the colored shavings. And, for a young person from New Mexico, in my upbringing, like, that was a whole different ball game. And my dad was friends with Ted Halbach, and the Halbach family was in Arizona for some time with a great herd of Brown Swiss and Holsteins. And anyway, at that point in time, Ted Halbach was working for University of Wisconsin in Extension. And so on one of those early trips to World Dairy Expo, my dad set me up with a campus tour with Ted. And so I got to see that. And of course, Ted was a great salesperson for UW, and so told me about all the neat things. I knew I was very interested in dairy judging, and I had a goal to compete in dairy judging in college. And at that point in time, Madison had a very competitive judging team. And it was just the whole 40,000 student campus, Big Ten athletics. And they had some really neat agricultural organizations, Badger Dairy Club and the Association of Women in Agriculture. So I just got a lot of these experiences where I felt comfortable with the environment, and also knew I wanted to go to a place that was hopefully going to open some doors for me in life that might be a little different than if I stayed at a closer to home in the Southwest, in terms of wanting to be engaged in the dairy industry. University of Wisconsin was actually the only college I applied to. So luckily I was accepted. Talk about another big move, again, halfway across the country for my family. In the days before cell phones, I had like a calling card that I could call my parents from a phone that was on the wall in the house that I lived in. I really love Madison. I double majored in dairy science and life science communications, which is a pretty popular double major there at Madison. I was successful in competing on the dairy judging team, so I met that goal. I was very involved in Badger Dairy Club, and the Association of Women in Agriculture is another ag organization on campus that I was very involved with. Yeah, I really loved my time in Wisconsin.
Sounds like kind of a no-brainer that you ended up there, and certainly with Ted's leadership and the connection, many of our leaders in the industry certainly have roots to that university. And you've not told us, how did your team do? Were you, I'm sure you're quite competitive with Cornell because of your New York upbringing. How did the competition between UW and Cornell go that year?
My senior year, I was one of the 4 kids that made it on the team that got to judge at World Dairy Expo. And I didn't have a great day myself, admittedly. My shining star was I did win the contest in Harrisburg my junior year. I won the contest, and I also won the linear evaluation contest. But My senior year judging at World Dairy Expo wasn't my greatest day, but one of my teammates, Mitch Amundsen, actually won reasons that day. I'm pretty sure our team came in second overall that year, but no, so we had a lot of fun on the judging. It was great to be able to be part of a competitive team, and there was I think 7 of us in my year that went out for the team, and we all really pushed each other, and there's still some of my greatest friends today were my friends from the judging team.
As a 22-year-old college graduate, you chose Holstein Association as your path to the start of your career. 22-year-old Lindsey moving to Brattleboro or wherever you did for Holstein. Tell us about your career and just kind of what general branches of the association you've worked with.
Yeah, so I actually started out as a Holstein Foundation intern the summer before my senior year of college, and that's how I ended up at Holstein at the end of the summer. John Meyer and Jody Hoynoski made me an offer to join the association full time. So my very first exposure to Holstein was working with the Holstein Foundation youth programs, and that's still something that's very near and dear to my heart, is all the programs that the Holstein Foundation offers. But when I started full time, my title was Public Relations Specialist, and so helping out the communications group, writing press releases, helping write things for the Pulse, still helping quite a bit with Holstein Foundation activities. And then after about 1.5 years, I was promoted to communications manager. So I oversaw our graphic designers and took on more of a leadership role in coming up with all the Pulse stories, and really just, doing photography, helping out with national convention and things like that. So I was communications manager for, I believe, about 4 or 5 more years. At that point in time, we had a key staff person leave the organization, and that caused John to do a bit of a reorganization, as you do when you've got a big gap to fill. John created what was known at that time as the Genetic Services Department. I've always had a passion for genetics. Genetics is the reason I'm in the dairy industry. So genetic services was genetic and genomic testing, our genetic evaluation programs, classification, and then things like software programs, pedigrees, and a lot of the other value-added things that Holstein does is in genetic services. And so I applied to be the executive director of the Genetic Services Department and was given that opportunity. So that was a lot of fun because that was communications. You get to be exposed to a lot of things at kind of a surface level, but moving into the Genetic Services Department gave me a chance to really, sink my teeth into some of these programs and have a chance to influence them and just really get engaged more on the business side of things, I would say. I had that role for several years. I believe it was June of 2023. John made the decision he was going to move back to Wisconsin and work out of our office that's in Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin. And at that point in time, he promoted me to Chief Operating Officer. Again, a nice progression because I'd been working with genetic services for several years. I was kind of ready for the next challenge. And so when I moved to Chief Operating Officer, I stayed involved with all the genetic services staff. But at that point in time, I also started to oversee our identification services group, customer service, as well as our IT department. Most of the things that were happening day to day here in Brattleboro, I was overseeing a lot of that and then just reporting back to John. So that was, again, neat just to be able to further broaden my horizons, get involved in different parts of the business and things like that. So kind of at that point in time, between things I was directly responsible for and then other activities that I just been exposed to, I really had a pretty well-rounded grasp of most of what happens here on a day-to-day basis.
It's a great progression, truly a story of success within every branch you've touched, and no more perfect leader than you to take this organization forward. I think as our listeners hear this discussion, they're going to realize just how entwined you are in every branch. Everything you've talked about, whether it's genetics or marketing or cattle or showing, every branch, Lindsey, you've got experience with, and I can see the passion and hear the passion in your voice of every branch that makes up this association. I say kudos to your board for finding the right person. One thing I really enjoy asking people in these podcasts is, tell us about mentors in your life. Who created Lindsey Worden to be who you are today?
There's definitely a few people that stick out in my mind when I think of people that have been great mentors and really contributed kind of to my path. So, of course, starting with my parents have always pushed me to do the best I could. They pushed me to get involved in different activities. They didn't push me to go to Wisconsin, but they certainly supported me in that decision. And again, not every family would just willingly ship their daughter halfway across the country to go to college, but maybe that tells me something about young Lindsey. But no, my parents have always been very supportive of just, again, pushing me to get involved with things, and anything I ever wanted to do or try, supported me in that. So I really appreciate that. And they'd be my original mentors. They had a huge influence on me. And then as I think about some of my later years, Ted Hallbach at University of Wisconsin, again, he really showed me the campus for the first time. And throughout my college career, Ted was very engaged with me. We communicated a lot. He was my judging coach for all of college, so he helped me a lot with that. I was his intern one summer. That was my first internship I had, was working with Ted in University of Wisconsin youth programs over the summer. So been a great influence in my life, and I still talk to Ted a few times a year now. We always have breakfast at World Dairy Expo, so Ted's been a great help to me in my life. And then of course John Meyer has presented me with so many opportunities, again pushed me and given me just enough rope to run with. So I couldn't be more thankful for his mentorship and support, because without him, I wouldn't have had any of these opportunities. I wouldn't have taken this path, and John really set me up for that in every way that he could. He's been a great positive influence for me as well.
Well, that's awesome, and great mentors. And knowing your mom and dad, I'm just going to leave this thought because I'm sure your dad will listen to this. I think this is a pitch for genomic testing the females in your life, because the good females can offset an average male. So yeah, I want to make sure that Chuck knows that. But great mentors and great stories of how you got there. I think maybe our listeners, I know it's important for me to understand that this organization is a member-run organization and run by a board of directors. Tell us a little bit about the structure of your organization and how it works.
So we've got our members, of course, and all members have the chance to have a say in what goes on with association business by electing their fellow members to serve as delegates to our annual meeting. So we've got our annual meeting is generally held in late June each year. And at the annual meeting, the delegates vote on any bylaw amendments that might have come up from either the membership or the board. They would vote on resolutions. And then, of course, one of the more important duties that the delegates do is elect our board of directors. And so any member is eligible to run for the board of directors. We've got a few seats that open up each year. So our board is made up of 12 directors. 9 of those are from the 9 election regions that we have, and then there's 3 at-large seats. And the board serves their 3-year terms, and a board member can serve up to 2 3-year terms. So a lot of our board members serve for 6 years. And then in addition to those 12 directors, of course, we've got our president and vice president that are elected separately from the board. And our president and vice president, those are 2-year terms. Generally, generally the vice president will run for president, and we've got those elections every couple of years. So that's the general structure, but it really does all start at the grassroots membership level, and people choosing to run for the board, and then people serving as delegates that are responsible for those elections.
I think it's important for those of us as breeders and members of this association to remember that. They are our eyes and ears, and we need to keep thinking about who the next people are, Lindsey. I mean, the younger generation to keep moving up through the ranks. I've worked for a board and I've been on boards. That connection between, youth and experience and the understanding of letting your management run, it looks like you've got that nice cross on your board today.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's important that you keep that for sure. So
yep, no question.
I think that's important. So along with your board that will certainly give you direction and leadership from the members, tell us a little bit about your staff and who some of your key colleagues will be. I've seen an announcement recently of kind of how you developed your staff, and tell us a little about the key people that we're going to get to know as your staff members.
So we're very fortunate at the Holstein Association. We've got close to 100 employees on any given day. And I'll say, for starters, I'm really proud that every single person that works here contributes to our mission and the success in providing outstanding customer service every single day. And I know John Meyer, a lot of times at annual meetings, he would talk about the unsung heroes that are back in Brattleboro or at Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin, or Visalia, California, that they're the folks that they just keep this place running and do the day-to-day work. And they don't get to go out and go to meetings and things like that in general, but they're so vital to what we do here. But then, of course, there are those of us that are more out in the world interacting with members. So in terms of kind of some of the key managers in the organization, of course, we've got Barbara Kasna as our Chief Financial Officer. Barbara's been with the association for over 20 years, and she does a wonderful job. Darren Sheffield is somebody that many people will recognize, is our Senior Director of Performance Programs, Membership and Governance. So Darren oversees he's kind of the product manager for several of those programs and services that we offer through genetic services with software programs and production records. And he also interacts a lot with our delegate process and people running for the board. So Darren's very good on the governance side of things. And again, I believe he celebrated 20 years last year. We've got Amy Fletcher's our classification manager. Anybody that signed up for classification at some point in time has probably talked to Amy. She's done a great job and been another longtime employee. We've got Jennifer Levesey, was just recently promoted to our Senior Director of Herd Book Services. So Jen plays a very key role overseeing the identification services department, as well as customer service and quality assurance, which includes our genomic and genetic testing programs. Jen, prior to this recent promotion, she's been with the association over 25 years, working mostly in our quality assurance department, and is extremely knowledgeable. So if anybody's had a parentage issue that they've worked on over time, they might have talked to Jen about that. We've got Jeffrey Bewley is our Executive Director of Genetic Programs and Innovation. And so Jeffrey really is always pushing us to think about, kind of what's the next big thing, what's the next cool thing that we should be thinking about offering our members. So I'm excited about a lot of the projects that he's working on. And then just a couple other people, Sarah Sarbacher. I mentioned all these people with a very long tenure. Sarah's only been on the job for a couple months. And I hired her into a new position that I created, which is the Director of Sales and Market Development. And so she's really responsible for supporting our team of regional sales representatives, as well as working on marketplace sires and agritech analytics to tie those pieces of the business together and really just, again, make sure that our field force is supported and driving sales, new business. And Sarah also works with our international activities that we do. Emily Bosch is somebody that many people will recognize. Emily's been with us a few years. She's a newer member to the team, but she's our Senior Manager of Communications and Marketing. So she's doing the pulse and social media and all that cool stuff. Her and her team are making sure that we're well represented out in the world with our public face. And then the last person I'll mention is Deidre Harkenrider, is our Director of Development for the Holstein Foundation. And so she's responsible for overseeing all that the Holstein Foundation does. And she also does some fundraising for the foundation as well as our national convention. So if I had to name a few, those are some names and faces that people might see if they've got an issue and they call in here, or they'd likely see those people out and about at meetings and things like that. But again, super proud of all of our team and how they work to support our staff.
Well, many of them we know, and many of them we've got connection with. But I think it's important for our listeners to understand that, we see the classifier, or we see our field rep, or maybe, we see Deidre at a event. There's a back wheel running this show of 100 people that, as you call them, the unsung heroes, maybe, Lindsey, that are driving this bus every day, and they keep the wheels on the bus. So
absolutely,
really pleased to hear about your team. This is a tough question, but what is the function of this association? Why is Holstein USA important to the business?
I've had a lot of conversations with farmers of all sizes, and I think the key function that Holstein USA can provide for farmers is that we're an unbiased source of information. At the end of the day, we're an organization governed by dairy farmers for dairy farmers, and really our job is to be objective and collect, record, and report lineage, genetic, and phenotypic animal data on Holstein cattle worldwide. So that's at the end of the day, that's our kind of our core job, is to do those things and then provide information back to people in a way that's useful for them. But when it comes to the unbiased nature, I mean, all that we want is for anybody that milks Holstein cattle to be successful, whatever that looks like for them, regardless of their breeding goals, regardless of where they might purchase their semen and how they choose to breed their cattle. That really doesn't matter to us. We want to provide them with the information that they need to make the best decisions possible to meet whatever their individual goals are, so that they can find success, in the dairy business. So when it boils down to it, that's kind of what I see as our core function.
Oh, and really important, as I think about your walk through this success story of your career, I think the message is The Holstein Association is the catalyst, whether you milk 50,000 cows or 50 cows for youth. To heck with all the rest of your programs, Lindsey, Holstein gives you the opportunity through youth programs to connect your next generation to become better.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I know all the things that you said are important, but is there a more important thing to our industry than developing our youth? And I think what you and Deidre are doing with your association and your fundraising and your scholarships and programs, I see that as important.
Yeah, absolutely it is. I mean, there's not much I like more than, coming out at a national convention in the morning and all the kids are scurrying around to whatever the activities are and they're fired up, and just seeing these kids meet each other. And kids might be from Utah, New York, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. They might never get the chance to meet if they weren't coming together at one of our events. And I think, like you said, myself growing up on a large dairy farm, not having a strong connection, having the opportunity to learn and develop a passion for our business is why I am where I am today. And so I'm extremely proud of our youth programs. They're so important. They're very unique amongst, when you look at other organizations around the world and what other breeds have to offer, there's not a lot that matches what we offer through our Holstein junior programs. And so I'm very, very proud of them.
That's a mouthful, because you've talked about all the functions, and I do think we as breeders, it's important for us to understand that Holstein is there for everybody. Again, I think you get it better than anybody, Lindsey, whether you milk 1,400 cows or 50 cows or like showing or don't like showing.
Mm-hmm.
All the members are important, and we need
Absolutely.
them all. And I really believe, Lindsey, you're the person to be the catalyst to do that. So we look forward to seeing how you get there. Another area, if you were just to give us a couple key focuses that now that Lindsey's driving the bus and your leadership team, what can we expect to see as priorities the next year or so that you're going to start putting your mark on the association?
Yeah, so we really want to look to, get new people involved in the association at all different levels. So whether that's, again, growing our participation in some of our youth programs, and certainly getting more dairy farms involved and officially identifying their cattle is a big priority. We want to increase registrations and continue to add value to the data that Holstein offers, providing it in different formats, more flexible formats, and just ultimately giving people their data in a way that they want it and that it's most useful to them. So just growing our use of technology, expanding the information that's available, digitally and online, so people have easier access is something that's a high priority. And then I would say the other thing would be an expansion on something that's been a priority for me for the last several years, which is just I think that partnerships and collaboration are critical to our success going forward. So just looking for opportunities to find like-minded organizations that we can perhaps partner with, find some efficiencies, expand the services that we offer is something that's a big focus for me. Is just figuring out how can we build those relationships and provide better service for our members.
Those are lofty and fun goals. I know Dr. Jeffrey, he'll challenge you on all that. So that's going to be fun. 'Tis the season for football, and I've been watching a lot of football and talking about how the team will take on the image of a coach. It seems like whether it's college or pro, it seems like the leader, if they're a good leader, the team takes on their personality and their vision. And Lindsey, I'm very excited that I believe Holstein leadership under your direction can take on your personality. I hope they do. And I think our members will do that. If you were to give a quick elevator speech, and I know I've asked you all these questions to wrap up, and then we're going to have some fun questions. Give the elevator speech for why you think someone that doesn't know anything about Holstein needs to get involved.
I like to come back to our mission statement, which is to provide leadership, information, and services to help dairy producers worldwide be successful. As I think about why should farmers get involved with the Holstein Association that are not currently, I've seen my whole life, farmers are always being pushed to do things better, whether it's, be more efficient with water usage or, be better stewards of the land, take excellent care of their animals. Those are all outstanding and important things, but it's always like, okay, well, what's the next thing? And we also have seen what's happening with farmers losing their milk markets for different reasons. There's an excess of milk, and what differentiates the farm that gets to continue shipping and the one that needs to scramble and find a new home for their milk. I truly believe that you've got a registered Holstein, you know pretty much everything that there is to know about that animal. We've got the lineage that traces back to the 1800s. We know everything about her genetics if she's genomic tested. We've got performance information. She's got probably 2 ear tags in her ear that have a unique identifying number in them. So you know exactly who she is, and that number ties together all of her data through the system. So I truly believe that having great identification of your animals and knowing all this information about them is going to be another differentiating point that farmers can use in the future of, it ties very closely to, traceability. We've got situations with animal health that are always present. And at the end of the day, it all comes back to having animals identified as individuals and being able to know everything about them and trace them throughout their lives. And so I think the Holstein Association can play a key role in that. And our members that are already working with us, they can check that box. And I do think that that's something that has value. And so that's certainly something that as we're looking to get new people involved, when you look at what you invest in registering a calf or participating in Holstein Complete, when you compare those expenses to a lot of the other things that a dairy farm has to spend money on, it's a reasonably small investment that I think can pay big dividends. And so those are the type of things that I think we'll be able to use to, to grow our membership and get more people involved in the organization.
Well, I think when they hear this podcast, Lindsey, get ready because they're going to be fired up. And I love listening to the young people that listen to these podcasts while they're milking their cows and driving their tractors, planting corn, and or clipping cows in the barn. Those are the people we need to connect with, and I think your vision will do that. Really put you through the paces, Lindsey, and I think your membership will appreciate getting to know you, and I hope we get good listenership. There's a fun side of Lindsey. I know it. I've seen it. Tell us what you like to do. I know you work extremely hard. Nobody can accomplish what you have in your short career without working hard. But what do you like to do for fun?
I like to travel. I travel a lot for work and that's fun most of the time. I love to see new places, try new things, have new experiences. So I do like to travel around a lot, but just in general, spending time outside. So we live here in Vermont. It's the Green Mountain State. Brattleboro is very scenic. It's located right here on the Connecticut River. We've got beautiful mountains. So when the weather's nice and I'm home, I really just like to spend time outside. Even just here locally, we've got some nice, easy hiking trails that I like to go out on the weekends, or maybe take a short drive over to New Hampshire in the White Mountains and do a little hiking over there. But just spending some time outside, kayaking, all that good stuff is what you'll find me doing when I'm home and don't have other things to do.
And you reference again, this wasn't our plan. You want to talk a little bit about we?
Sure. So my husband Randy here in Brattleboro with me. We will have been married 7 years in September, and so Randy's a great partner. He's had a different path in the dairy industry than I did. I joke that we couldn't have had too much different upbringings than we had. So Randy grew up in downtown Philadelphia, basically, and got interested in dairy cattle through his father, who was heavily involved in the industry. Randy is by career as a professional photographer, and nowadays he does a lot with social media and helping people with websites and things like that. But he really helps spur my travel bug. We like to go out west to national parks, and he brings all his camera equipment and takes beautiful pictures of animals out in Yellowstone and things like that. So no, Randy's wonderful. He's supportive in everything I do, and I will say he's done a lot of traveling in his former life, former careers. He doesn't travel so much anymore, but he picks up a lot of the slack for me when I'm gone, especially this time of year is a busy season. So he takes good care of things when I'm not there.
Well, I couldn't let the interview go without bringing up Randy. And I would say, Lindsey, you probably didn't know his dad, Pete Blodgett, very well. Not as well as some of us. I knew Pete Blodgett very well. He was one of my mentors. And I'll tell you what, Pete Blodgett would be one proud man of what you and Randy have accomplished. So I speak for Pete in that, and all the friends of Pete. Nobody more passionate about cows than Pete Blodgett, and he would absolutely love your enthusiasm. Hats off to Randy and Pete for sure. I want to leave our listeners with one more fun thing that I like to do when I interview somebody that's as intense as you. We're going to make it one more fun thing, and I've got 5 rapid fire questions. You're going to have to answer quick, and I hope I don't stump you on any of these, but
right.
5 rapid fire questions about Lindsey Worden that we can leave our listeners with. What's your favorite food?
Fried cheese curds.
Says the graduate of the University of Wisconsin. Yep. Well done.
I can't get fried cheese curds here in Vermont, so my first stop when I go to Wisconsin is typically Culver's. So
I know a little about that. I have a Culver's within half a mile of my house here in Florida, Lindsey. So I'm the same. What's your favorite sports team?
Philadelphia Eagles, go Birds.
Actually, I'm going to ask our producer to delete that because I'm a Commanders fan, and you're going to be sorry next weekend.
I'm afraid you might be right, but
who is the person in the world you'd most like to meet?
You brought up my late father-in-law, Pete Blodgett. I never actually got a chance to meet Pete, so he would be at the top of my list if that was possible. But if it was somebody that I could just somehow snap my fingers and sit down with them now. Actually, speaking of the Eagles, Saquon Barkley is somebody that I've really come to admire him. I just think he's got like a really cool mentality, mindset. And obviously he's done some super impressive things on the football field, but I would just love to have a conversation and see if he's as down to earth in real life as he comes off as being on TV.
Say, yeah, you've got a good one there because I believe he is. What's your favorite music?
I don't listen to a ton of music, and my Spotify pretty random mix, but if we're driving in the car, we usually have like a classic rock station on.
Okay, and then last, you could be a star athlete or a pro singer. Which would you prefer to be?
I can honestly say I probably don't aspire to be either, but if I had to pick one, it would be the pro athlete. I think I didn't play sports in high school. Like I don't consider myself to be an athletic person, so that would be kind of cool.
I think all your answers are fabulous except for the Eagles thing, and I'll forgive you for that. It seems to be bad timing, but no, this has been fantastic, Lindsey. When we set this up, my goal with this podcast was to tell our listeners and the members of your association who you were. And as I wrap up my thoughts on this conversation, pedigree is a big part of what I do in my world at Showbox Sires. And certainly, Lindsey, we start with pedigree. And you've got a great pedigree for this job. And then I think about performance. You know, we talk about how you measure performance in the Holstein cow. Your performance has come through great success with the association and great vision and great understanding. I like the fact that you're hands-on. I think our members will be impressed when they meet you. If their heifer's acting up in the show ring, you'll go grab her. At Madison, you'll want to get in the pack and be with the cows. And I don't think enough can be said about that. But you also brought up an important point about milk marketing and the importance of how we have to market our product. And I think you've got a great vision there. So my wrap up of this conversation, Lindsey, is the association is in great hands. I'm very excited to see what the next 25 years brings under your leadership and what you can do for the Holstein Association.
Appreciate the chance to be on this podcast, Tim. You're always somebody that I have enjoyed visiting with over time. And, you know, like you said, I do like to be hands-on with animals. My family, while I was in college, moved back to New York. So that my family has a dairy farm in central New York. And I don't get there as often as I would like to. But, you know, several weekends a year, I'll find myself there. I still like to get my hands dirty when I can. I would just encourage anybody, if you see me out and about, I love to meet all of our members. I've had the great fortune over the last, I've been with Holstein 18 years this summer. So I've had a chance to meet a lot of our members, but please, if you see me and we haven't had a chance to meet yet, I would love to visit with anybody that's got ideas for things that they would like to see from the Holstein Association, or if there's anything they think that we can be doing better. Very open to that. And I just really look forward to getting out in the countryside and meeting as many people as I can this year. So please, if you see me, don't be shy. Feel free to come up and say hi to me. And again, just appreciate the opportunity to visit with you today.
And I would say for our listeners, stay tuned, because I've got a plan to interview Lindsey to talk about how young people can accomplish what she has through the work of their local Holstein associations. So excited for that. Well, it certainly has been my pleasure as part of the Showbox Sires series, The Evolution of the Great Cow. You know, some might wonder why you're interviewing a CEO of an association in this series, but to me it fits, because the evolution of the great cow takes great leaders. So I thank the DairyVoice and Dairy Business News. Dairy Business News is always there with the most important things, and this is certainly an important topic in our industry. So I thank you, Lindsey Worden, the new CEO of Holstein Association, for joining us today, and look forward to future episodes of our podcast series.
Thank you very much.